Oh my lord. Hello. There's my kitty cat. I got raccoons in the front of the house fighting. They were making an awful racket here a couple minutes ago. I'm too late with the camera. You can hear them, but they were way louder. See if I can scare them away. Get out of here. Scaboose. I think they're gone. Yeah, they were pretty loud. I had the illusion that I saw the last of them, but at least my cat is up here by the barn. Yeah. Hello, kitty cat. Anyway, on this, there's how much play it had, and they're both the same. So anyway, I've been contemplating and reading comments, trying to figure out my best way through this. If I heat this up, the hotter I get it, the better for pushing. Okay, first of all, I put the big bearing on here, and then I heat this up, put it in a press, and of course flipped over. And as long as this is good and warm, it should slide down over this bearing without too much strain on these balls. So when I put the small bearing in, if I put the small bearing in this housing first, heat it up a little bit, put my small bearing in, then I have to be a little wary. I'm not sure how hot I can get this with the bearing in it to get it warm enough to slide down over this one. And that makes it, well, as I said, there's a couple I don't knows here. So if this, I don't know exactly how hot a person can get this. I read comments where it can be 100 degrees Celsius. That's like 210 or 200 to 220 degrees. I don't know if I can heat the small bearing sitting in there at 220 degrees. So if I put the big bearing on here first, that's no problem. Warm it up, slide it on, no problem. But to put the small bearing in, see, the other problem is the small bearing is the only bearing with the flange. There's no flange on the big bearing. But I do know that the big bearing sits flush here. So if I put the assembly so that the big bearing goes in flush, then I make a little adapter plate to fit between the hub and this hub, like to keep it in the right position, like not in too far, not out too far, and have it secure. Then I flip it over and I just press my small bearing in. And I was thinking about taking two of these small bearings, which I have two, which are no good. And they were brand new. This one was brand new, but where it went on a bad shaft, it got the center all wore out, so I took it out. So anyway, if I weld two of these together, that almost is enough as a press to press my new bearing in. And it would put the load inside and outside evenly, and put no strain on the bearing. But the problem I see is there's several thou wore off the inside edge of both these small bearings where they were abused. So that means if in the press, only the outside would hit and then the inside would have a gap. So, and also this isn't, two of those bearings isn't high enough to miss the shaft when it goes together. So what I need is two of these bearings welded together and something like 1/4 inch piece, a big washer, ground it to be the same size as the hole in the center, and that tacked on here that can act as a template to hit both inner race and outer race of the small bearing to press it in on the shaft and in here at the same time. Now, the other way, of course, I said a few minutes ago, was to put the small bearing in first. But then in the heating of this, I don't think I can heat it to 200 degrees with that small bearing in there. So maybe 100 degrees, which is 50 degrees Celsius. So if I heat it to 100 degrees, 50 degrees Celsius, maybe that's enough for this big bearing to slide in. But anyway, I'm still thinking, and I had this piece here, I took it to the machine shop, and they took 5 thou off each end to clean it, and it's nice and square. And this sleeve is still almost about a millimeter longer than this sleeve. So that sleeve got worn considerably more than this one, but this one is still much longer than that one. And my issue and one of my biggest worries is trying to measure the end results before I put it together. So I've been thinking about assembling with parts that I'm not using, assembling one just so I can measure where the axle sits away from this hub after everything's tight. That way I'll know, but at the same time I could take the spare tire off or the tire off the outside of the car and the brake hub and measure that one because it's already together and untouched. It's in good shape. So that might be a good idea to jack the car up, take that wheel off and take the hub off and take a measurement on that. That way I know what this one is, but I almost have to put this one together with that sleeve wore just because I need to know the measurement, because I know this one is 1 millimeter longer. So if I press it together, if I press together this unit with parts I'm not using, that'll tell me if the sleeve is compatible in its new length for the measurement on the end to make sure that that hub does not scrape my emergency brake stuff. Because in here, when everything was rocking loose, there's what it did. The actual hub that bolts, that the wheel nuts go in, scraped right here. So it runs very, very close to hitting. Like when it rocks, it hits. So I know it's close. And so anyway, this other wheel hub assembly that I got, it never hit. So this one didn't rock as much as mine. Mine, when it went bad, it rocked and it went in and hit this. But this one isn't hit, so that gives me that good piece I can use. And this thing here got totally bulged out of shape and bent. And the new one is flat. So, and that's my new flange, and there's the new axle. And there's my two new bearings right here. And there's my incredibly expensive brand new thermostat that I may or may not need, but I got it. But anyway, there's my two new bearings. but I am dragging my feet. Like this much money, I'm in no big hurry to put it together, but I am kind of in a little bit of a this or that on the exact proper procedure and the measurements. I don't want my biggest issue is not straining any of the bearings, putting it together at all. Then we're then concerning about what torque it is. I believe it's between 145 and 155, which is quite big, but it's a good sized nut. You know, the shaft's 27 millimeters, and I believe that's pretty close to the tightness. And it is supposed to be bent over like that. That's why they put this edge on it like that, because it's supposed to be bent into those little grooves cut in the axle. But I'm concerned that when this thing all goes together, that it might be the brake hub might be too close, because the sleeve is worn down a little too much, because I have no way of knowing what the new sleeve or spacer is in length, because both of mine were worn. And the longest one I had turned down, but he only took a total of 10 thou off it. So it might be all right. And maybe I'm worried about, maybe I'm just worrying more about some things that I kind of see being a problem, but maybe they're not a problem. Maybe there's things I'm overlooking that are a problem that I don't even see. But I don't want to have to pull this thing back apart, because as far as I'm concerned, if I carefully manage to get it pushed together without straining the bearings by heating it, and then I have to pull it apart, I'm not doing the bearings any good by pulling it back apart to put a spacer in and then pressing it back together again. Like once through is bad enough, but doing it 2 more times, like out and back in, is unacceptable. So I'm glad the raccoons have stopped. They made a hell of a racket just before I could get the camera going. Sorry I didn't catch it on time, but I'm happy my cat wasn't involved. But yeah, raccoons. Anyway, see you guys later. I'll be with you when I start to put this thing back together. Bye.